The worst moment of my life started with a woman in diamonds calling me a gold digger in a room I had no business standing in. I had only come to the Vale Grand to hand over a last-minute speech packet to a donor on the charity gala schedule. 10 minutes. That was all I needed. Instead, a security guard blocked my path, looked me up and down, and said, "Staff entrance is around back." It climbed up my throat. My black dress was cheap. My heels were old. But I was here to work. "I am not staff," I said, gripping the folder tighter. "I am here to deliver a speech." That was when Celeste Rowan turned, all silk and polished contempt, and smiled like she had just found entertainment. "A speech," she repeated. "That is a cute excuse." A few people laughed. Quietly. Cruelly. "These events attract all kinds," she added, letting her gaze drag over me. "Some women will do anything to get near a billionaire." For one hard second, I could not breathe. Public shame hits fast. Faster when everyone around you is rich enough to pretend they are too refined to enjoy it. He should have walked away. He should have thrown the folder at her perfect face and left. Instead, I stood there, burning alive, because I needed the check from this job and because pride does not pay hospital bills. Then the room changed. He did not hear him at first. He felt him. The air tightened. Conversation steeped. Heads turned. Asher Vale stepped through the crowd in a dark suit that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent, and every person in that ballroom made space for him. I did not look at Celeste first. I looked at me. At my white-knuckled grip on the folder. At the guard blocking my way. Then he held out his hand. "Give me the speech, Asher Bennett." My pulse slammed. He passed him the folder. Celeste's smile flickered. "Asher, really, I was just handling a situation." He opened the packet, scanned the first page, then said it without raising his voice. "She works for me." Silence. Glam and brutal. The kind that cuts deeper than shouting. The guard stepped back at once. Celeste went still. He should have felt grateful. He did feel grateful. That was the problem. Because when Asher Vale looked at me again, there was nothing warm in his face. No rescue. No softness. Just control. Just power. "You are late," he said. My mouth fell open. I was stopped at the door. "And now you are speaking to me instead of fixing the problem." He says we're cold enough to freeze the room all over again. "Walk with me." I turned. No question. No choice. He followed him through a ballroom full of stairs, my skin still on fire, my pride in pieces, and my stupid heart already warning me to stay away from the one man in this city I could never afford to need. I pushed open the doors to a private hallway and finally stopped. "You embarrassed my event," he said. He stared at him. "Your event almost humiliated me for sport." His jaw shifted. Not anger. Not surprise. Something sharper. "Then you can make yourself useful," he said. "You are staying tonight. We are rewriting the gala clothes from scratch." He should have said no. I should have walked out before this billionaire with his command in his voice and ice in his eyes dragged me any deeper into his world. But then he looked straight at me and added, "Unless you would rather explain to me why a woman like you was trying so hard to get into my ballroom in the first place." It did not take me to a quiet office. It took me to war. The private conference room on the 32nd floor was all glass, screens, and pressure. Half a dozen people were waiting inside with open laptops, bad coffee, and the kind of panic rich people wear when their polished night starts cracking. The second Asher walked in, every voice died. I tossed my speech packet onto the table. "We are rewriting the closing remarks," he said. "No." Then he looked at me. "You caused the delay. You fix it." My humiliation was still burning under my skin, so I snapped before common sense could save me. "Your security caused the delay." A few eyes lifted. Round move. Dangerous move. Asher only slid into a chair and steepled his hands. "Then impress me enough to make it worth the inconvenience, Asher Bennett." Fine. If you wanted useful, I could be useful. I grabbed a pen, pulled the marked up pages toward me, and started cutting whole paragraphs apart. The room. Moved fast after that. Todo fast. Numbers. The owner names. Device schedules. A last-minute change in the youth scholarship segment. Every time I handed Asher a page, he slashed through half of it with that cold, brutal precision of his. Weak verb. Slash. Too sentimental. Slash. This line sounds borrowed. Slash. My jaw tightened so hard it hurt. Maybe the problem is not the line, I said. Maybe the problem is that no one believes you mean any of it. Silence. Sharp. Stupid. Final. One woman near the screen actually stopped typing. Asher looked up slowly. Explain. He should have backed down. He did not. You want people to donate, trust, and feel something, I said. But you talk like a man negotiating a hostage release. You do not need warmer words. You need one honest sentence. The room waited for him to crush me. I did not. I leaned back instead, eyes locked on mine, unreadable and dangerous. Write it, he said. So I did. One line. Plain. Direct. About what it costs to keep a promise when no one is watching. I read it once. Then twice. That stays, he said. Just like that, every person in the room started moving around my draft instead of against it. It should have felt like a win. It did not. Not when the man across from me still looked at me like I might be a weapon he had not decided whether to use or lock away. By the time the final pages were approved, it was after midnight. My feet ached. My pride ached more. He reached for my bag. If we are done, I am leaving. No, Asher said. One word. Flat. Absolute. He rose, walked to the end of the table, and set a new folder in front of me. Contract. Temporary. Confidential. Personal speechwriter to the CEO for the next run of high-stakes events. He stared at it. Then at him. You cannot be serious. His expression did not change. You are the only person in this building who said what everyone else was too afraid to say. His gaze sharpened. Take the contract, Nora. Unless you are more interested in getting into my world than surviving it. The contract sat between us like a trap dressed up as an opportunity. He did not touch it. Personal speechwriter. He asked. That is not a real job. That. Isalist. Asher did not blink. Then decline it. The problem was, men like him always said things like that when they already knew the answer. By the time I made it home, the sky over Manhattan was turning that thin gray color that made everything feel more tired than hopeful. Old apartment smelled like reheated coffee and old worry. Mom was asleep in the recliner with a blanket slipping off one shoulder. Ellie was at the kitchen table, half buried in financial aid forms and bad excuses. I looked up the second I walked in. You are late. I noticed. He dropped my bag and reached for the stack of past due notices sitting by the fruit bowl like they owned the place. Hospital. Tuition. Rent. He hated every envelope. Ellie ran a hand through his hair. I can defer a semester. No, it came out too fast. Too hard. Mamster opened her eyes and saw my face. Nora, she said softly, then froze when she noticed the folder in my hand. The logo on the cover was small, but not small enough. Vale Capital. Her whole body changed. Where did you get that? He should have lied. He did not. From work. That is not work, she snapped, fully awake now. That family is trouble. Silence hit the room. Ellie looked between us. What family? Mom ignored him. She looked only at me. You stay away from the Valles. Do you hear me? My chest tightened. He was too tired to dodge. Too angry to obey. Maybe if anyone in this house actually told me the truth for once, I would know what I am supposed to stay away from. Mom flinched like I had slapped her. He hated that. I hated myself more for not taking it back. She looked down at her hands. Your father trusted the wrong people, she said quietly. That is all you need to know. No. It was not. Not when I was 26 years old and still living inside half a warning. Not when my father had died in a wreck no one ever explained right. Later, after Eli disappeared into his room and Mom went still and silent again, I pulled the old storage box from the top shelf in my closet. My father's papers. His watch. A few legal pads. A mess of things no one had touched in. Years because grief had turned them sacred. He found the file buried under tax returns and old insurance forms. Vale Foundation. My pulse kicked hard enough to hurt. Inside was a copy of a letter draft, I'm finished, with notes in my father's handwriting all over the margins. Audit discrepancy. Missing funds. Internal resistance. And one line circled so dark the pen had nearly torn the paper. Do not trust what they say happened. He stared at that sentence until my vision blurred. Then I looked at the contract on my bed. He had told myself I would only take that job for the money. That was a lie now. Maybe it had always been one. The next morning, I walked back into Vale Tower with the signed contract in my bag and my father's file burned into my memory. At the executive floor reception desk, they handed me a temporary badge and pointed me toward the private conference wing. He had barely taken 3 steps when I heard Asher's voice through the open doorway. Cold. Control. Dangerous. From now on, Asher Bennett works directly with me. Then a woman answered in a clipped, polished tone I already hated. That is not happening, Asher. He stops cold. Celeste. Celeste said my name like it tasted cheap. He stayed outside the doorway for exactly 1 second, long enough to hear her say, you do not put a girl from nowhere at your side in front of donors. Then Asher answered, flat and lethal. Watch me. That should have felt like victory. It did not. It felt like being moved onto a chessboard by a man who never lost. Then minutes later, I was in the back seat of a black town car beside him, headed to a donor lunch at a private club on the Upper East Side with a leather folder in my lap and my nerves pulled tight enough to snap. What exactly am I doing there? He asked. Asher did not look up from his tablet. Listening. Taking notice. Speaking only when necessary. He turned to him. You hired a speechwriter, not a statue. His gaze cut over. Cool. Assessing. Then do not make me regret the difference. The club was all dark wood, crystal glasses, and old money trying to smell respectable. The second we stepped in, I felt the weight of eyes again. Men in tailored suits. Women in perfect pairs. Everyone polished enough to make me feel like a stain. Celeste glided over before we even reached the table. Asher, she said warmly, then looked at me with that same elegant cruelty. And this must be the help. He went still. There it was again. That clean little knife. He opened my mouth, but Asher moved first. Asher Bennett is here because she is useful, he said. Try being the same. Celeste's smile tightened. It was not enough to make this easier. It just made it public. At the table, one of the donors, a silver-haired man with a flag pin on his lapel, listened to my revised youth scholarship pitch and actually laughed. That angle is too emotional, he said. People like us give because we invest in outcomes, not sob stories. No offense, young lady. I am sure sentiment plays better where you come from. It rushed through me so fast I could barely swallow. Asher said nothing. Not at first. That hurt more than it should have. Then he set down his glass and looked straight at the donor. We will use Ms. Bennett's framing, he said. Because unlike the rest of this table, she understands that trust is built before money moves. The room shifted. Just enough. The donor cleared his throat. Of course. No apology. Men like him never did that. But they went quiet, and they wrote checks. By the time lunch ended, I had been dismissed, measured, and defended in the span of 90 minutes. My chest was still tight when we got back into the car. I looked out at the city blurring past and said the stupid thing anyway. You did not have to do that. Yes, Asher said. I did. He turned to him, caught off guard by the answer, and for one reckless second thought I had read him wrong. Then he added, colder than before, I do not let people damage something I am paying for. Something. Not someone. The warmth died on contact. He looked away before he could see it hit. Outside the window, the city gleamed. Inside the car, I sat beside the billionaire I was not supposed to trust and hated the fact that his defense still felt dangerously close to safety. By the time we got back to Vale Tower, I had already made myself one promise. Always. Not going to mistake Asher Vale's protection for kindness again. That promise lasted about 12 minutes. He was crossing the executive corridor with my notes from lunch when I heard raised voices through the half-open boardroom doors. Not loud. Men like these did not need loud. Power does its best work in low voices. He should have kept walking. Instead, I caught Celeste's name, then the word merger, and my feet stopped on their own. The Rowan Alliance stabilizes everything, one man said. It also hands them leverage, Asher replied, his voice cut glass cold. Another voice came in, lighter, almost amused. Damian Vale. Come on, Cassin. You need the board. The board needs the Rowans. And the Rowans come with Celeste. This is not romance. It is math. My stomach turned. So that was it. Celeste was not just the polished woman hovering near him like she already owned his future. She was a deal. A strategy. A bloodless little bridge between old money and more power. He hated how much that bothered me. He hated it more when I realized I had leaned half an inch closer to hear the rest. That was when my heel clicked against the marble. Teeny sound. Fatal sound. The room went silent. Then the door opened all the way, and Asher stood there looking at me like he could strip lies down to the bone. Enjoying the meeting, Asher Bennett. It rushed through me. I was passing by. Damian appeared behind him, smiling in that easy way men do when they are watching trouble bloom. Sure you were. He wanted to walk away. He wanted to hit him with my folder. Instead I lifted my chin. If your meetings cannot survive being overheard from a hallway, maybe the problem is not me. Damian actually laughed. Asher did not. His eyes moved over me once, sharp and unreadable, and I knew exactly what he saw. A woman with too many questions standing too close to a room she did not belong in. He stepped aside and shut the boardroom door behind him. Come with me. It led me down the corridor into his office and closed that door too. The silence inside was worse. You were listening, he said. Not a question. I was walking. Do not insult my intelligence. There it was. The steel wall again. He folded my arms to stop myself from shaking. Then do not accuse me like I am some intern sneaking around for gossip. You are not senior enough for gossip, he said. Which leaves motive. That landed hard. So hard. Because motive was the one thing I actually had. He forced my face blank. You hired me to write, not disappear. His jaw tightened. For 1 second, I thought he might fire me. Instead, he crossed to his desk, pressed a button on the intercom, and said, Have Ms. Bennett moved to the executive floor. Effective immediately. He stared at him. What? He looked straight at me. If you are going to hover near closed doors, I would rather know exactly where you are. That should have sounded like punishment. It sounded worse. Like a cage with a window view. Then he added, colder still, congratulations, Nora. You are officially too close to this world to stand outside it anymore. He did not mean to fall asleep at my desk. I meant to finish the donor briefing, revise Asher's investor remarks, answer 3 flagged emails, and get out before this building swallowed the rest of me whole. Instead, sometime after 9 de la noche, the words on my screen blurred into white noise. My head dropped once. Then everything tilted. The next thing I knew, a voice was cutting through the dark. Nora. Low. Sharp. So close. He jerked awake so fast my chair rolled back an inch. Asher was standing beside my desk, suit jacket off, sleeves pushed up, looking as controlled as ever except for one thing. His eyes were not cold. They were assessing. I am fine, I said immediately, because humiliation moves faster than honesty. He tried to stand. Bad idea. The floor shifted under me. My hand hit the desk edge instead. Asher caught my elbow before I hit anything harder. That was not convincing, he said. He hated how steady his grip felt. He hated that I leaned on it for half a second before pulling away. I said I am fine. And your body said no. Before I could argue again, he was already walking me down a side corridor I had never seen, past a private lounge and into a quiet room with a leather sofa and a floor lamp turned low. Not the executive floor. Not the world outside. You'll stay. Hidden place built for people who were not allowed to fall apart in public. A doctor arrived 10 minutes later. Actual doctor. Not aspirin and a lecture. He sat there in stunned silence while he checked my pulse and asked about sleep, meals, estrés. He wanted the floor to open and save me. She is exhausted, the doctor said at last. And she is running on caffeine and stubbornness. Asher stood near the window, arms crossed. Can that be treated? He shot him a glare. The doctor almost smiled. After he left, silence settled in heavy. Embarrassing. He stared at the blanket someone had draped over my knees and wanted to disappear. You call the doctor, I said finally. I collapsed at a desk, not on a battlefield. Asher looked at me for a long second. You work like you are losing something if you stop. That hit too close. He looked away first. I do not need to be managed. No, he said quietly. You need to stop pretending you can survive on nothing. He should have snapped back. He should have rebuilt the wall he kept cracking without permission. But the room was too quiet, and I was too tired to lie well. Some of us do not get the luxury of falling apart, I said. His face changed then. Not softer. Worse. More real. Then do not do it alone. My chest pulled tight around that sentence. Dangerous sentence. He stood too fast, shrugged off the blanket, and reached for my bag. Thank you for the doctor, I said, keeping my voice hard. But I am still your employee, not your problem. He made it all the way to the door before his voice stopped me. Tomorrow morning, he said, come again, unreadable again, your legal support request for your brother goes to the top of my list. He turned slowly. He had never told him about Eli. By 8:15 the next morning, I knew two things. First, Asher Vale had people watching more than I understood. Second, I hated that part of me felt safer because of it. He was halfway through revising a donor memo when my phone lit up with Eli's name. He answered on the first ring and heard panic instead of hello. Nora, they pulled me out of class. My grip tightened around the phone. Who did? The dean. Campus IT 2. They are saying I accessed a restricted server last semester. Cold rushed through me. Eli had made one stupid, desperate mistake months ago trying to fix a tuition portal issue from the inside. I swore he had stopped before real damage was done. Do not say anything else, I said, already standing. I am coming. He grabbed my bag and headed for the elevator. He almost made it. Celeste stepped out of the executive suite like she had been waiting for this exact crack in my day. Leaving again, she asked, gaze sliding over me. How predictable. He kept moving. Move. She did not. Let me guess. Family emergency. Her smile turned polished and cruel. People like you always have one. The words hit hard because they were designed to. He should have ignored her. He would have, if a junior executive passing by had not smirked and added, maybe that is why Mr. Vale keeps her around. Charity is good for optics. He stops dead. Sham burns fast. Faster when you know the room is listening. I turned, pulse hammering, and before I could decide whether to walk away or set the whole hallway on fire, Asher's voice cut through everything. Repeat that. The silence that followed was instant. Brutal. He stood at the far end of the corridor with two legal staff behind him and a tablet in one hand, looking like judgment in a tailored suit. The junior executive went pale. Sir, I did not mean, no, Asher said. You meant exactly what you said. A looked at HR, who had somehow appeared out of nowhere. He is off this project. Effective now. Then his gaze shifted to Celeste. And if anyone in this building speaks about MS Bennett like that again, they can leave with him. Celeste's face barely changed, but I saw the crack. Teeny. Satisfying. Dangerous. He should have felt vindicated. Instead, my chest tightened for a different reason. Because this was no longer private. This was a claim. Asher walked straight to me. We are going to Colombia, he said. He blinked. What? Your brother is already with counsel. My stomach dropped. Counsel? Mine. A opened the elevator himself and waited. You said it was a school problem. He prefers solved problems. He stepped inside because Ellie mattered more than pride, more than questions, more than the way my pulse kept tripping every time this man decided the world would move around me. The doors started to close. Then Asher added, low enough that only I could hear it, and Nora, stop looking surprised. If you are mine to defend in public now, your family is not getting left exposed. The strange thing about being protected by Asher Vale was that he never gave you time to thank him without feeling foolish for it. Ellie was safe. That should have been the only thing in my head. Instead, 2 days later, I found myself in the passenger seat of Asher's car again, headed downtown to a community center funded by the Vale Foundation. Why am I here? He asked, watching the city slide past in sheets of cold afternoon light. Because the new youth grant language was yours, he said. You should see what it touches. He turned to him. That almost sounded human. His mouth moved. Not quite a smile. Do not get used to it. He told myself this was still work. Just work. Then we walked into the center, and everything tilted. Kids ran through the lobby with backpacks half-zipped and sneakers squeaking against polished floors. A volunteer coordinator rushed over, flustered and grateful, and the man beside me changed without warning. Not soft. Not warm. Just different. Focused. Present. I crouched to speak to a nervous 12-year-old at eye level. I remembered a staff member's name from 6 months ago. I listened when a teen girl explained why the scholarship lab needed later hours. No performance. No cameras. No board. He stood there holding my notebook and hated how badly it shook the story I had built around him. You are staring, Asher said quietly once we stepped into a hallway lined with student artwork. I am revising my risk assessment. A glanced at me. And he looked away first. It is inconvenient. That got me another almost smile. Worse than a real one. More dangerous. We ended up in the old gym while the staff reset for a workshop. For the first time in what felt like forever, there was no one crowding us. No Celeste. No board member. No executive waiting to sneer. Just the echo of bouncing basketballs from the next room and the smell of floor polish and coffee. I do not know what made me say it. Maybe the quiet. Maybe the way he had looked at those kids like promises still mattered. My father used to bring me places like this, I said. He said if you want to know what people worship, look at what they save first when money gets tight. Asher leaned against the bleachers, arms folded. And what did he save? My throat tightened before I could stop it. Other people. That hung there between us. Real. I did not fill it with pity. Thank God. After a beat, he said, my father saved the company until it killed everything else around him. He looked up. His expression had gone still in that way that meant the truth had slipped out before he could lock it down. You miss him anyway, I said. Missing someone and forgiving them are not the same thing. The words hit me so cleanly I forgot to breathe for a second. Because I knew that language. He lived in it. Grief with teeth. Loaf with splinters in it. He took one step closer without meaning to. No, I said softly. They are not. His gaze dropped to my mouth, then rose again, sharper now, like he hated the fact that he had done it. The air changed. Heavy. Charred. Stupid. Then his phone rang. Celeste. Her name flashed bright against the screen. A looked at it once, jaw tightening, and answered. What? A listened for 3 seconds, then the wall came down over his face all over again. When he hung up, the gym felt colder. We are leaving, he said. He should have asked why. Instead I looked at the phone still in his hand and realized the most dangerous thing in the room had never been his power. It was the part of him I had just started to understand, right before someone else reminded him who he was supposed to belong to. After the community center, I made the mistake of thinking I could still keep my head clear around Asher Vale. That was my first problem. My second was the locked archive room on the executive floor that should have been none of my business. He only went looking for an old donor report. That was the excuse, anyway. The truth. Wesley. He had seen the Vale Foundation seal too many times now. On press packets. On grant summaries. On the wall at the center. It kept tugging at the same bruise inside me. So when I found the records room half open and empty just before 7 de la tarde, I stepped inside. 1 minute, I told myself. 1 look. Then I was done. The room smelled like paper, dust, and expensive silence. He found archived foundation files faster than I should have. All organized. All clean. He flipped through binders, grant ledgers, old compliance memos, and then I saw it. Bennett, Samuel. My father's name hit me like a fist to the chest. My hands went cold. He pulled the file free and opened it right there under the dim shelf light. There were redactions. Internal notice. All the preferences. And then a memo clipped near the back with a digital approval line at the bottom. Asher Vale. My stomach dropped so hard I had to grab the edge of the cabinet. No. No, that could not be right. The date was years ago. It would have been too young to run anything that important. But his name was there. Plan. Oficial. Buried under language about exposure risk and reputational containment. What are you doing? His voice cut through the room so sharply I almost dropped the file. I turned, pulse crashing, and there he was in the doorway. Notier. Coat over one arm. Eyes like winter glass. For 1 stupid second, I thought about lying. Then I looked down at the page in my hand and knew my face had already told on me. I was looking for donor records, I said. Wait. Useless. Asher crossed the room in 3 measured steps and stopped close enough for me to feel the force of his anger before he even spoke again. That is a confidential archive. Then maybe you should not leave it open. His stare hardened. Do not do that. Do what? He snapped, fear turning sharp in my throat. Act like I am the problem because I found something you did not want found. Silence. Dead silence. Then his gaze dropped to the memo in my hand. He took it from me, read 1 line, and his whole face changed. Not killed. Not exactly. Something tighter. More dangerous. Who told you to look in here? No one. Wrong answer. He stepped back and hit a button on the wall console. The lock clicked behind him. He heard it. Felt it. My heart kicked hard. You do not get to lock me in a room because I asked the wrong question. And you do not get to dig through my company's restricted files and pretend this is innocent. He stared at him. The charge between us from the gym was gone. Burned clean out. In its place was something colder. Older. Was it innocent when my father died? He did not mean to say it. But once it was out, it cracked the whole room open. Asher went still. Completely still. What did you just say? Tolate. He had already crossed it. He lifted my chin, even though everything inside me was shaking. Samuel Bennett, I said. That was my father. So tell me, Mr. Vale. When exactly were you going to mention that your family buried his name inside your foundation secrets? The second my father's name left my mouth, the room stopped being about a confidential file and became something far more dangerous. Asher did not move. Did not blink. He just looked at me with that hard, impossible stillness men like him wear when something has cut deeper than they expected. Samuel Bennett, he repeated. Not like a question. Like a piece of broken glass he had just stepped on. I forced myself to hold his stare even while my pulse was tearing through me. You heard me. He looked down at the memo in his hand again, then back at me. And you think this gives you the right to dig through restricted archives? He laughed once. Bad idea. Bitter idea. That is your defense. His jaw locked. My defense is that you broke into a records room and touched files you were never authorized to see. I touched a file with my dead father's name on it. The words came out sharper than I meant them to. Or maybe exactly as sharp as I meant them to. For 1 second, something flashed in his face. Not killed. Not confession. Recognition, maybe. Then it was gone. You should have told me, he said. He stared at him. Told you what? That I grew up on half-truths and hospital bills while your family buried mine under legal language. It took one step closer. If you had a connection to this foundation, you should have disclosed it before signing a contract. There it was. Cold. Corporati. Clean enough to make me hate him for it. I did not know there was a connection until I found one. Convenient. That one word hit harder than it should have. Because beneath the anger, I heard it. Suspicion. I thought I had come into his life carrying this on purpose. Maybe part of me had. Maybe that was what scared me most. Open the door, I said. I did not. Answer the question first. No, my voice shook. I hated that. You do not get to interrogate me because your name showed up where it should not have. My name on an approval line does not prove what you think it proves. I said it too fast. Too controlled. Which somehow made it worse. Then explain it. Silence. Brutal silence. His eyes held mine, but he said nothing. That told me more than words could have. Maybe not truth. But fair. Or strategy. Or both. He grabbed my bag off the table beside the door. That is what I thought. Distime, when I looked at him, I let all of it show. The anger. The hate. The stupid, humiliating disappointment that he might really be exactly what my mother warned me about. I crossed the room and unlocked the door without another word. The click sounded like a dismissal. Ora daré. He stepped past him, refusing to look back. He made it halfway down the executive hall before my phone started vibrating so hard I thought it might crack in my hand. Unknown number. He almost ignored it. Then I saw the text preview. We have photos of Nora Bennett and Asher Vale. The story goes live in 20 minutes. My blood ran cold. He turned back toward the archive hall just as Asher came out behind me, his own phone already in his hand, his expression gone flat with fury. He looked at me once and said the one thing that made the floor disappear under my feet. Stay where I can see you. These just became war. By the time I got home, the story had already spread farther than I could breathe around. My phone would not stop vibrating. Unknown numbers. Message requests. Headlines. One of them used a photo from the gala, cropped tight. And now to make it look intimate, dirty, deliberate. Seus new gold digger? Another had a shot of Asher's hand at my elbow outside the donor lunch like he had been claiming me for weeks. He stood in my kitchen staring at my own face on a screen I could not afford to throw across the room. Then I heard my mother's voice behind me. Nora. He turned too late. She had already seen it. Her face drained so fast it scared me. I told you to stay away from them. Shame hit first. Then anger. I did not ask for this. That family destroys people, she said, gripping the back of a chair like the floor had shifted under her. Do you think a man like that can be near a woman like you without a cost? A woman like you. She did not mean it cruelly. That almost made it worse. He grabbed my coat before the hurt could settle in and left before I said something I could not take back. The lobby of Vale Tower looked different when your humiliation had gone public. Receptionists went still when I passed. Assistants glanced up, then down too quickly. By the time I reached the executive floor, Celeste was already there, perfectly composed, waiting beside my desk like a woman arriving early to a funeral. You can still salvage a little dignity, she said. Resign quietly. Let the story burn out. Men like Asher do not keep scandals. They outlive them. He kept my voice steady by force. Thank you for the advice I did not ask for. Her smile sharpened. This is me being kind. The board already thinks you are a liability. Before I could answer, the conference room doors opened. Press team. Legal. Security. Asher stepped out in a navy suit and a face carved back into ice. Incide, he said. The briefing lasted 11 brutal minutes. Deny el language. Investor reassurance. No comment on private speculation. My name reduced to risk management. He sat there silent until someone read the final statement aloud. Asher Vale confirms Ms. Bennett remains on his executive communications team. Any claims of personal misconduct are false and legally actionable. Relief and hurt slammed into me at the same time. It was keeping me in place. It was not throwing me to the wolves. But he was not saying anything. Else either. Not about the pictures. Not about why I mattered enough to defend and not enough to define. After the meeting, the others filed out. He gathered my notes with stiff fingers. So that is it? He asked without looking at him. I stay. The company survives. Everyone moves on. Asher's voice stayed low. That is the cleanest outcome. He laughed once. Empty. For who? He did not answer fast enough. That was answer enough. He turned and walked out before the crack in my chest got any louder, because being saved by him was starting to feel dangerously close to being left by him too. He went home angry at Asher and ended up angry at my own front door instead. The apartment was too quiet. No television. No dishes. No Eli pretending everything was normal. Just my mother sitting at the kitchen table with both hands wrapped around a mug that had gone cold an hour ago. She looked up the second I walked in, and I knew. She had seen every headline. Every photo. Every version of me reduced to a greedy girl hanging off a Billionaire's shadow. Do not start, I said, dropping my bag harder than I meant to. Then do not make me watch this happen twice, she shot back. The words stopped me cold. Twice. He turned slowly. What does that mean? She stood too fast, chair scraping the floor. It means the Vale family ruins people. No, I said, stepping closer. It means you know more than you keep telling me. Her face tightened. Old fear. Old grief. The kind that had lived in this apartment longer than I had. Ma'am. Tell me the truth. Silence thread. Then she sat back down like the fight had gone out of her all at once. Your father was working with the Vale Foundation before he died, she said quietly. My pulse thudded in my ears. Doing what? He found something wrong in one of their charitable funds. Missing money. Altered reports. He said if he stayed quiet, children would lose scholarships and families would lose support. He closed my eyes for 1 second. Of course he had. Of course my father had chosen the harder thing because someone else needed him to. Did he tell you who was responsible? He asked. She shook her head. No names. Just that the foundation was not plan. Just that powerful people were involved. My throat burned. And you let me walk into Vale Tower without telling me that. Her eyes filled, but her voice did not break. I thought staying ignorant would keep you alive. He laughed once. Sarp. Hate. That strategy is not going great. She flinched, then reached into the drawer beside her and pulled out an old envelope I had never seen before. Cream paper. My father's handwriting. Uncent. He wrote this the week before he died, she whispered. My fingers shook as I opened it. Most of it was practical. Records. Datis. To account numbers. That one line had been underlined so hard the ink nearly cut through the page. If anything happens, do not trust the sun either. He stared at that sentence until the room tilted. De son. My mind went straight to one face. Cold eyes. Controlled voice. Asher. Of course Asher. Who else could it be? My mother caught the change in my expression and stood up fast. Nora, listen to me. No, I said, folding the letter with hands that did not feel like mine anymore. You should have listened to me sooner. He turned and headed for my room before she could stop me, because if I stayed another second I was going to shatter in front of her. Once the door was closed, I sat on the floor and read the line again. Do not trust the sun either. Then I looked at my phone. At Asher's name on 3 unread messages. And for the first time since he walked into that ballroom and changed my life, I was no longer afraid of how much power he had over me. He was afraid that my father had warned me about him before I even knew his name. The next morning, the first thing I saw was my own face on a gossip account outside my apartment building. Bloody. Something easy to weaponize. By the time I got to Vale Tower, 2 photographers were already across the street pretending not to wait for me. He should have turned around. Instead, I walked straight through the revolving doors and into another problem wearing an expensive suit. Asher was standing by reception, phone in one hand, expression carved into something unreadable. You are moving, he said. He stopped short. I am what? Temporarily. I did not. Waste a second. The press has your address. They will keep digging until they get something uglier. You are staying at the estate. My pulse jumped. No, his gaze locked on mine. That was not a request. It rose fast. You do not get to relocate me like office furniture because your scandal got messy. For one heartbeat, I thought he might snap back. Instead he stepped closer and lowered his voice. This is not about convenience. It is about control. He can protect you there. Protect. That word again. Dangerous word. He should have refused anyway. Then my phone buzzed with an unknown message. Niece building. Hope your mother enjoys cameras. The blood drained out of my face. Asher saw it happen. God no. He hated that I got in. I hated more that I would have done anything to keep those cameras away from my family. The guest house on the Vale estate was the kind of place magazines called understated when they meant richer than reason. Stone fireplace. Soft lamps. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the kind of lawn no one in my zip code had ever owned. He stood in the middle of it with my overnight bag and felt like a trespasser in every possible way. You will have privacy here, Asher said from the doorway. That depends on your definition. I ignored that. Or pretended to. Dinner is at 8. You need to keep working. He almost laughed. You moved me into your world and assigned me a meal like it is a meeting. Everything with me is a meeting until proven otherwise. Then he left, and somehow that answer stayed with me longer than it should have. At 8, I found him in a smaller dining room, no staff in sight, no press team, no board, just 2 plates and a bottle of sparkling water. It should not have felt intimate. Eat. He sat down carefully, like the wrong movement might change the air between us. For a while we only talked about work. The revised donor event. The legal response. A foundation speech next week. Safe subjects. Clean subjects. Then the silence stretched, and something in me cracked first. Do you ever stop? He asked. I looked up from his glass. From what? Managing everything. Watching every angle. Treating people like risk factors. I held my gaze for a long second. Not often. He should have left it there. Instead I said, that sounds lonely. The word landed between us like a truce neither of us had ordered. I set his glass down. Lonely is efficient. He almost told him efficiency was a poor substitute for being known. He almost told him this house felt too quiet for a man like him. He almost asked why he had not sent me away if I was really such a problem. He leaned back in his chair, watching me with that still intensity that always made me feel half seen and half undone. You should stop looking at me like that, Nora. My heartbeat stumbled. Like what? His eyes dropped, then lifted again. Like you are trying to decide whether I am dangerous or just alone. He forgot how to answer. The truth was, I had started to suspect he was both. His phone lit up on the table before I could say anything, and the screen flashed a name that hit like cold water. Celeste. I looked at it once. His jaw tightened. Then he turned the phone face down without answering. I do not know why that tiny choice felt bigger than it was. Maybe because it should not have mattered to me at all. Maybe because it did. I looked back at me, and for one impossible second I thought he might say something that would change everything. Instead he said, very quietly, "Do not get comfortable here, Nora." The warning should have pushed me away. It did the opposite. Because the way he said it sounded less like a command and more like a man trying to stop himself from asking me to stay. The invitation arrived at breakfast on heavy cream paper, like cruelty had decided to wear perfume. Celeste was hosting a woman's philanthropy brunch in the city, and apparently my presence was expected. He looked up from the card and found Asher already watching me over his coffee. "Do not go," he said. The warning should have ended it. Instead it lit something stubborn in me. That sounds a lot like an order. Call it pattern recognition. His voice stayed calm. Celeste does not invite women she plans to treat kindly. He should have listened. He went anyway, because pride is its own kind of bad judgment. The townhouse. We saw white roses, polished silver, and women who smiled with their mouths and cut with their eyes. The second I stepped inside, I knew I had walked into a trap built specifically for me. Celeste crossed the room in pale silk and easy confidence, took my arm like we were friends, and guided me straight into the center of the conversation. "Everyone," she said, bright as a knife, "this is Nora Bennett. Asher's newest cause." A few women laughed. Softly. Expensively. He pulled my arm free. "I am not on Johnny's cause." Celeste only smiled wider. "No. That is not what people are saying. Especially once they learned your father's name." My blood went cold. She turned to the room as if sharing a charming anecdote. Such a tragedy, really. A man accused of mishandling charity funds. It explains why Nora feels so at home around scandal. For 1 second, I could not hear anything except the rush of humiliation in my ears. My father. Reduced to gossip bait between champagne glasses. "Take that back," I said. My voice shook anyway. Celeste leaned closer. "Why? Is the truth suddenly inconvenient?" He should have walked out then. Instead I did the worst thing. He stood there long enough for the cameras near the entry hall to notice my face. Long enough for the shame to become public. Then the room shifted. Not gradually. Completely. Asher stepped in with the force of a door slamming open in a burning house. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. He took off his coat, laid it over my shoulders, and looked at Celeste like she had become a problem he was done tolerating. "You will apologize," he said. Every woman in the room went still. Celeste's smile cracked for real this time. "For what?" "Protecting your reputation from a girl who," "Careful," Asher said. "Used one word. Flat. Final." Celeste swallowed whatever came next and turned to me with poison still in her eyes. "I am sorry. It was not sincere. It did not matter." Asher had made her say it in front of everyone. He guided me out through a wall of staring faces and camera flashes, one hand at my back, steady and infuriatingly warm through the fabric. He did not speak until we were inside the car and the door shut on. The noise. Then I turned on him. "Why do you keep doing that?" His eyes narrowed. "Doing what?" "Saving me in public and saying nothing in private." The words came out harder than I meant them to. If Celeste means nothing, say it. If I mean nothing, say that too. But stop acting like I matter only when someone else is trying to tear me apart. It went very still. The city moved outside the window in cold blurs of light. "You want a definition," he said quietly. I want the truth. His jaw tightened, and for one impossible second I thought he might finally give it to me. Instead he looked away first. That is the one thing I cannot give you yet. The first real crack in my certainty did not come from Asher. It came from a spreadsheet. The morning after the brunch, I was back in the executive archive with clearance this time, cross-checking old foundation reports under the excuse of preparing legacy language for the next donor event. Excuse on paper. Obsession in reality. I pulled up the memo with my father's name again, stared at the approval line again, and finally noticed what grief and anger had missed the first time. The digital signature was authorized through a proxy account. Not directly issued by Asher. My pulse kicked hard. He opened the metadata. Then another file. Then another. Same pattern. His name at the bottom. Someone else routing the approval. My breath went shallow. That did not clear him. But it cracked the neat story I had built. And I hated how relieved part of me felt. You look like a woman discovering she may have hated the wrong man. He turned too fast. Asher Vale was leaning in the doorway like he had been there for longer than I liked. You should knock, I said. You should stop digging where dead men buried secrets. His smile stayed easy. Roundly easy. I walked in without waiting, glanced at the screen, then at me. Let me guess. You found out Cousin Asher's signature is not as simple as it looks. Every nerve in my body sharpened. Why do you know that? Damian shrugged. Because nothing in this family is simple. Last of all him. He should have shut the laptop and walked out. Instead I held my ground. If you have something to say it. He studied me for a second, like he was deciding how much poison to pour at once. Asher protects the Vale name first. Always. If there was dirt back then, he would bury it even now. The words landed because they lined up too neatly with my worst fear. You sound very invested in me believing that. Maybe I just hate watching smart women get manipulated by men in tailored suits. He almost laughed. You are literally wearing one. That got a real smile out of him. Brief. Tengan. Chuck Grant Vale, he said quietly. My father's brother had his hands in every foundation deal worth hiding. If you are asking who benefits when decent men end up dead and paperwork goes clean, start there. Grant. The name hit something in my memory. A holiday photo in an old magazine. His face at one end of a boardroom table. A man who always seemed to stand just outside the center and still control it. Damian stepped back toward the hall. Just do yourself a favor, Nora. Do not confuse Asher wanting you with Asher telling you the truth. That one stayed with me after he left. He hated that too. Later that evening, I passed the smaller sitting room near the east wing and heard voices through the cracked door. Grant's first. Smooth. Controlled. The Bennett girl is closer than I like. My whole body went cold. Then Celeste answered, low and sharp. Then maybe your nephew should have stopped saving her in public before people started asking why. He froze outside the door, every instinct screaming at once, because for the first time since this began, the danger around me no longer felt like a rumor. It felt like someone in this house already knew exactly who I was. A storm took the power just after midnight and turned the East Wing into a confession I had no business surviving. 1 second I was in the study pretending to work through Foundation records without thinking about Grant's voice in the hallway. The next, every light on the estate died at once. Darkness hit clean. Total. Then the backup system failed too, and for the first time since I had stepped into Asher Vale's world, even his house looked vulnerable. He grabbed my phone, got 1 weak bar of service, and headed for the hall just as a sharp crack of thunder rolled over the roof. Nora. His voice found me before the light did. Asher appeared at the far end of the corridor with a flashlight in one hand, shirt sleeves rolled, tie gone, looking less like a billionaire and more like the kind of man who had been forced to carry too much for too long. The library has a generator line, he said. Come on. He should have said I could manage alone. Instead I followed him into a room lined with dark wood and old books, where one lamp glowed low from a backup battery and rain hit the tall windows hard enough to sound like a warning. The quiet inside was different. Not peaceful. Pressurized. He set the flashlight down and looked at me once. You are shaking. It is cold. That was not an answer. He wrapped my arms around myself anyway. He watched me too closely for comfort. You heard something yesterday, he said. Nota question. My heart kicked. What makes you think that? Because today you looked at everyone in this house like you were measuring exits. He should have lied. He was getting very tired of lies. I heard Grant mention me, I said. And Celeste sounded like she already knew I was a problem. Asher's jaw tightened hard. You should have told me. He laughed once, sharp and low. That is rich coming from you. I did not snap back. I just held my gaze and said, fair. The word landed harder than an apology would have. Sand rolled again. Closer. Mine. The lamp flickered. Something in me gave way with it. Why do you trust no one? He asked before I could stop myself. I went still. Then he leaned one shoulder against the edge of the desk and looked not at the room, not at the storm, but straight at me. Because every time I did, it became leverage. His voice stayed quiet. So quiet. My father trusted family over truth. My mother trusted appearances over reality. And everyone around me learned early that affection makes an excellent handle. He swallowed hard. So you decided feeling nothing was safer. No, he said. I decided showing nothing was. That one almost took the air out of me. Because I understood the difference. Because I lived there too. He took one step closer without planning it. My mother thought ignorance would keep me safe, I said. All it did was leave me blind long enough to walk straight into the thing that ruined us. His eyes changed. Sharper. Warmer. Worse. Nora. Used my name. But the way he said it made it feel like something living. He could have told him then. About the letter. About my father. About the line that still lived under my skin, do not trust the sun either. He almost did. God, I almost did. Then his phone lit up on the desk with a harsh white glow against the dark room. Damien. Asher looked at the screen once, and whatever had shifted between us closed halfway again. I answered on the second ring. What? I listened. His face hardened by degrees. Control. Dangerous. I am on my way. When he hung up, the storm suddenly felt small compared to whatever had just entered the room with his silence. What happened? He asked. I picked up the flashlight and did not answer immediately. The board servers were accessed from inside the estate, he said at last. Then his eyes landed on me, unreadable and heavy with the exact kind of suspicion I had been dreading. And right now, Nora, you are the only person here with a reason to go looking for secrets. Nothing kills a moment faster than being looked at like evidence. After Asher said I was the only person in the estate with a reason to go looking for secrets, the air in the library went cold enough to crack. He stared at him, every soft thing from the last 10 minutes burning off on contact. You think I hacked your servers? He asked. His face did not move. I think timing matters. He laughed once. Bad sound. Hit sound. That is a polished way of saying you still think the worst of me. I picked up the flashlight. That is a polished way of saying I do not ignore breaches inside my own house. Then he walked out, leaving me alone with the storm, the half-confession I had almost given him, and the sickening realization that closeness meant nothing if suspicion could erase it in one sentence. By morning, the estate had power again, but whatever had shifted between us had not come back online. He skipped breakfast. Skipped the mine house. Skipped looking at my phone until I absolutely had to. That was when I saw the anonymous email. No name. No subject line. Used 3 attachments and 1 sentence in the body. You are asking the wrong questions. My hands went cold before I even opened it. The first attachment was an old photo of my father standing outside a courthouse with Grant Vale. The second was a grainy scan of a transfer log tied to a foundation account. The third was a partial memo with a line highlighted in red, exposure contained to preserve family stability. Then came the final sentence. Ask Asher what he destroyed to keep the family name clean. I read it 3 times. Ketit that my pulse answered like it believed every word. Ketit more that part of me was already building a case around him again. I found Asher in the executive study just after noon, standing over a spread of board documents like sleep and doubt had both missed him. I looked up once when I walked in. No words. No softness. Just the controlled attention of a man already braced for impact. What now? He asked. The words sliced deeper than they should have. He pulled my phone from my pocket and held it too tightly. I want to ask you one thing, and I want a real answer. His eyes narrowed. That depends on the question. My throat tightened. This was the moment to tell the whole truth. About my father. About the letter. About why I had walked into this world with more than one reason. Instead I chose the cobards version. Alf the truth dressed as confrontation. How much did you bury for your family? He asked. Silence. Sharp and immediate. Excuse-me. He took a breath that did not help. If Grant was involved back then, if the foundation was dirty, if my father got too close, then what exactly did you do to keep the Vale name clean? The second the words landed, I knew I had aimed wrong. His face did not crack. Eat sealed. That is what this is, he said quietly. Not anger. Worse. Precisión. You were never asking who hurt your father. You were asking how much of it leads back to me. I am asking because every time I get closer to the truth, your name is already there. And every time I get closer to trusting you, I find another reason not to. That one hit hard enough to knock the air out of me. He should have denied it. Should have said no, I did not come into your life carrying questions, suspicion, a dead man's papers, and a private reason to stay close. But the truth jammed in my throat, and my silence said everything my mouth would not. Asher watched me for one long second, and whatever had opened between us during the storm shut all the way. Get out, Nora, he said. Before I start believing the rest of this was a performance too. Getting thrown out by Asher should have been the worst part of my day. It was not. The worst part came 20 minutes later, when my phone lit up with Eli's name and I answered to the sound of him breathing too fast. Nora, he said, voice tight, there are 2 campus officers here. And someone from administrative review. They are saying they reopened the server case. My whole body went cold. What do you mean reopened? I mean they are acting like I hacked half the university instead of one stupid portal 6 months ago. He was already moving, already grabbing my coat, already hating the timing so much it made me sick. This was not random. It was too clean. Todo precise. At Columbia, they had Eli in a gray office with bad fluorescent lights and a woman from compliance who kept using the words pattern and intent like she wanted him to sound bigger and guiltier than he was. I looked up the second I walked in, all 20-year-old panic and forced bravado. I told them I want a lawyer. Bride hit me so hard I almost broke on it. Then the woman across the table said, that would be wise. Wise. Not necessary. Which meant someone wanted him scared before they wanted him charged. He got him out for the day on a temporary hold, but not before a man in a navy overcoat stepped into the hallway and handed me a card with no firm name, no office address, just a number and a smile too polished to trust. These things can become very ugly, he said softly. Families like yours do not always recover from public investigations. Something's discretion is kinder. My fingers tightened around. Descartes. Who sent you? Someone who thinks you are asking expensive questions. I left before I could stop him. He stood there shaking, because this was not about Eli anymore. It was about me. About pressure applied exactly where it would hurt. He told myself I could handle it alone. He told myself I had to. Then I looked through the glass at my brother trying not to fall apart in a waiting area chair, and my pride suddenly felt like the dumbest luxury on earth. By the time I got back to Vale Tower, I hated myself for what I was about to do. He found Asher in the legal conference room, still in that same dark suit, still looking like a man who had locked every vulnerable thing back inside a vault. A glanced up once, expression hardening when he saw me. I thought I made myself clear. So did I said, voice thinner than I wanted. But my brother is being squeezed because of whatever this is. That got his full attention. He hated the relief that came with it. Ellie, he asked. He nodded once. Someone reopened his case. Someone sent a lawyer to warn me off. Asher stood before I even finished. No hesitation. No debate. Just motion. He picked up his phone and said, already dialing, get Colombia's general counsel on the line. Now. Then he looked at me, anger and something far more dangerous moving under the surface. You should have come sooner. He stared at him, wrecked by the fact that even now, even after everything, he was still the first wall that held when mine started collapsing. Asher moved fast once he decided something mattered. That should have calmed me. Instead, it made the fall worse. Within an hour, Ellie's case was frozen pending review, Colombia's counsel had backed off, and the lawyer with the blank card had vanished like he had never existed. He stood in the glass hallway outside Vale Legal watching Asher end call after call with the same cold precision he used on everyone else, and it hit me all over again that this man could still reach for my family even while he barely trusted me with a room. Eli is covered for now, he said, finally pocketing his phone. No one touches him again without going through me. Relief hit first. Then guilt. Sharp. Immediate. Because every time he protected me, the truth I had not told him felt uglier. He opened my mouth. This was it. The moment to say everything. About my father. About the letter. About why I had walked into his world carrying more than a resume. Before I could speak, Damien's voice cut clean through the corridor. Perfect. He was hoping to find you both together. It was holding a slim black folder. My stomach dropped on sight. So my instincts are faster than thought. He knew before he even smiled. Board meeting in 5, Damien went on lightly. You might want to bring this, though. It adds context. Asher's expression hardened. Spit it out. Damien handed him the folder instead. No need. She can do that. He saw my father's name before Asher fully opened it. Then my own notes. Copies of the archived Foundation memos. A timeline I had started building in the margins. Not proof. Worse. Intent. The private shape of my suspicion, flattened into evidence against me. Asher went still in that terrible way that meant the damage had already landed. Where did you get this? He asked Damien, but his eyes were on me. Damien shrugged. Someone on staff noticed Ms. Bennett has been collecting more than speech drafts. He thought cousin should know his communications director came with a family agenda attached. He should have denied it. He should have fought cleaner. Instead, I looked at Asher and saw the exact moment every fragile thing between us rewrote itself into betrayal. It was not like that at first, I said. Wrong sentence. Fatal sentence. His face changed on contact. At first, he repeated quietly. He stepped toward him. Asher, listen to me. He did not know what I would find when I took the job. He only knew my father died with your foundation in his files and my mother spent years terrified of your family. So you got close to me for answers. At first, yes. The truth tore on the way out. But then it changed. A laughed once. No warmth in it at all. That is supposed to help. Damien stayed silent now. A did not need to touch the knife once it was already in. Asher closed the folder, every movement precise enough to hurt. You should have told me. I know. You let me defend you in public. Protect your brother. Move you into my home. Every word landed harder. All while you were investigating me. I was investigating what happened to my father. His eyes flashed. Do not separate me from that sentence like it was not the point. Silence collapsed around us. The boardroom doors opened down the hall. People were arriving. Suites. Voices. Hour on schedule. Asher did not look away from me. Leave the estate tonight, he said. His voice stayed low. Control. Which somehow made it crueler. And if there is anything left you have not admitted yet, do not insult me by waiting. Being thrown out of the Vale estate should have made leaving easy. It did not. Every room I packed myself out of felt like evidence of my own stupidity. The guest house was too quiet. My suitcase sat open on the bed while I shoved clothes into it with hands that would not stop shaking. I kept replaying Asher's face when Damien opened that folder. Not angry at first. Hate. Then hard. Like trust had died in real time and I had been close enough to hear it. By the time I got back to my apartment, the city was already dark and my chest felt scraped hollow. Mum looked up when I walked in, took one look at my suitcase, and did not ask. Maybe mothers know when their daughters have finally learned the exact lesson they were trying to avoid. I dropped onto the couch, stared at nothing, and made myself one promise. No more waiting for Asher to understand. No more hoping the truth would soften on its own. If I wanted answers about my father, I was getting them without him. The next afternoon, Grant Vale asked to meet me. Not through an assistant. Not through legal. A direct message sent to my private email with a time, a location, and a line that made my blood run cold. We should discuss what your father left unfinished. The restaurant he chose was quiet, expensive, and almost empty at 3 de la tarde, the kind of place where rich men arranged clean betrayals over white tablecloths. Grant looked exactly the way I remembered from old photos. Polished. Silver at the temples. The kind of charm that only works if you never look too long at the eyes. Bendit. Nora, he said warmly, as if we were two reasonable people having a delayed family conversation. Thank you for coming. I almost did not. Smiled. But you want the truth more than you want pride. Your father was the same. Hearing my father reduced to a trait shared with him made something ugly twist in my stomach. He stayed standing. Say what you called me here to say. Grant folded his hands on the table. Leave the city. Take your mother. Help your brother transfer schools. He can make all of that painless. He stared at him. You are trying to buy me. I am trying to spare you. His voice stayed gentle. That was the sickest part. You have already damaged enough by getting close to Asher. There is no reason to destroy what remains of your family too. My heartbeat kicked hard. Why would I have the power to do that unless what I am looking for is real? That was the first time his smile slipped. Teeny. Fast. But I saw it. He reached into his jacket and slid a sealed envelope across the table. Call it a final kindness. He did not touch it until I got outside. Wind hit hard at the corner, sharp with late-season cold. He opened the envelope right there on the sidewalk. Inside was one old photograph. My father. Standing beside another man in front of a courthouse. Shoulder to shoulder. Not arguing. Not opposing. Working together. He knew that face. He had seen it in framed portraits all over the estate. It was Asher's father. For one long second, the whole story I had built in my head tilted off its axis. My father had not been fighting the Vales from the outside. At some point, he had been standing beside them. And if that was true, then either everyone had lied to me for years, or I had just let the wrong man break my heart for the wrong crime. The photograph did not let me sleep. My father beside Asher's father. Not enemies. Not strangers. Allies, maybe. Which meant the story I had been handed my whole life was either incomplete or designed to point me at the wrong target. By morning, I was already on the subway to Queens with the photo in my bag and a name on a sticky note I had pulled from one of my father's old files the night before. Marta Klein. Former foundation accountant. Retired. 68. The kind of lead people only keep if they are planning to come back for the truth later. Her apartment sat above a laundromat that smelled like detergent and hot metal. When she opened the door, she took one look at the photograph in my hand and went pale. You need to leave, she said. I need 5 minutes, I shot back. My father died with Vale Foundation files in his desk, and someone has been using my family as leverage ever since. You owe me more than a closed door. Something in my face must have convinced her, because a second later she stepped aside. Her living room was small, neat, and full of the kind of silence people build after surviving things they never talk about. She did not offer coffee. She did not pretend this was casual. She just sat down and stared at the photo until her shoulders sagged. Your father was not trying to destroy the Vales, she said at last. He was trying to help one of them do the right thing. My chest tightened. Which one? Daniel Vale. Asher's father. The room seemed to tilt. Martha clasped her hands together to stop them trembling. The foundation had holes in it. Money rerouted. Report solder. Your father found it first. Daniel believed him. They started building a case quietly because the money trail led too close to the family. Grant, I said. Her eyes lifted. Slow. Heavy. Yes. Hearing the name out loud from someone who had been there hit harder than any theory ever had. Then why did they both die? He asked. Martha's mouth thinned. Because men like Grant do not panic publicly. They contain. Daniel's death was called a cardiac event. Your father died in that car crash 2 weeks later. After that, the records disappeared, and everyone left alive learned to be careful. He thought of my mother. Of the fear in her face every time she said the Vale name. Of the letter. Do not trust the son either. My throat went tight. The son, I said. My father wrote that before he died. Who was he talking about? Martha looked away first. Not Asher. Relief hit so fast it almost hurt. Then confusion. Rastin behind it. Then who? Grant's son was handling proxy authorizations at the time. Damian. He went still. Every memory of Damian's easy smile, his helpful tone, the folder in his hand, suddenly rearranged itself into something uglier. Martha leaned forward. Your father thought Daniel would tell his boy the truth. It was wrong to trust the wrong son. He sat there with my pulse pounding in my ears, because in one brutal sweep the dead had just redrawn the map of the living. Asher had not been the son I was warned about. Damian had. And Grant had spent years standing safely at the edge while other names took the blame. When I finally stood to leave, Martha caught my wrist. If you go after them, she said quietly, do not do it alone. He almost told her I had already lost the one person powerful enough to stand beside me. Instead I slipped the photo back into my bag and headed for the door with a new truth burning under my skin. My father had not died fighting the Vales. He had died fighting beside one. And the man I had pushed away might be the only heir left who did not know what his own family had really buried. He went back to Vale Tower telling myself I was there for practical reasons. My badge. My laptop. The half-finished donor language still saved on a server I no longer had a right to touch. That was the lie, anyway. The truth was worse. After what Martha told me, I needed one look at Asher before I could decide whether I had destroyed the last honest ally my father ever had. The executive floor felt different when you no longer belonged to it. Assistants went quiet when I stepped off the elevator. One of the legal associates I recognized from Ellie's case nearly stopped short when he saw me. Asher Bennett, he said, lowering his voice, I do not think today is a good day. For me or for Vale Capital. He gave me a look that answered both. Mr. Vale has been pulling internal logs since 6 this morning. Security, school contacts, board access, everything. Someone from Grant Vale's office reached out to Columbia 3 days before your brother's case resurfaced. My pulse kicked hard. You are sure? I am sure I should not have told. Joe. He walked off before I could ask more. He stood there with my breath caught halfway in my chest, because that was not rumor. That was a line. A real one. And it meant Asher had started pulling on the same thread I had. He should have left then. Instead I kept moving and stopped cold outside the board antechamber when I heard Celeste's voice, sharp enough to cut glass. The stock is still shaky. Joe fixed this with certainty. Joe announced the engagement, the Rowans backed the merger, and the board stops panicking. Asher answered without raising his voice. No one word. Glenn. Absolute. Silence followed. Then Celeste again, thinner now. You are choosing chaos over stability because of that girl? I am choosing not to build my company on a lie. My heart slammed so hard it actually hurt. Through the cracked doorway I saw him standing at the end of the table, suit dark, face carved into something colder than anger. Across from him sat Grant, composed as ever, hands folded like a man watching weather instead of war. Be careful, Asher, Grant said mildly. Your father died preserving this family. Do not confuse recklessness with courage. The room seemed to narrow around that sentence. Asher's jaw tightened, but he did not back down. Then maybe preserving this family is the problem. For one impossible second, I could not breathe. Because there it was. Not a defense. Not an excuse. A fracture running right through the heart of his own side. It was not protecting the machine anymore. It was turning on it. Grant rose slowly, smoothing his jacket as if none of this mattered. If you continue down this road, he said, do not expect the people closest to you to survive the fallout. I walked toward the door before I could move. He stepped back just in time, flattening myself against the wall as he passed. His eyes flicked over me once. Calm. Knowing. Not surprised at all. Then he was gone. I turned back, pulse hammering, and found Asher in the doorway looking straight at me. No softness. No anger either. Just a terrible kind of clarity. Now you see it, he said quietly. The question is whether you are ready to stop fighting the wrong person. The first sign that someone had been inside my apartment was the silence. Not the normal kind. Not the thin, tired quiet of a place held together by overdue bills and old grief. This silence felt handled. Shifted. He stopped in the doorway with my keys still in my hand and looked around. The lamp by the couch was crooked. One kitchen drawer stood half open. My father's storage box, the one I had shoved to the back of my closet, was sitting on my bed with the lid off. He moved through my chest so fast it almost hurt. He crossed the room in 3 steps and dropped to my knees beside it. Papers everywhere. Not stolen. Searched. That was worse. Whoever came here had not wanted the old watch or the cash envelope taped under the drawer. They wanted names. Proof. History. He reached for my phone with shaking hands just as headlights swept across the window. A car door slammed. Then another. 3 hard knocks hit the apartment door before I could panic properly. Nora. Asher. He opened it too fast and found him standing there in a dark coat, rain still on his shoulders, with one of his security men already scanning the hall. How did you know? He asked. His eyes moved past me into the wrecked room and hardened at once. I had external watch put on the building after the press got your address, he said. Motion alert tripped 22 minutes ago. He should have been angry. Instant relief hit so hard it felt humiliating. I stepped inside without waiting and took in the torn-apart closet, the open box, the scattered files. They were looking for documents, he said. Not you. That is supposed to make me feel better. I ignored that and picked up one of the pages from the floor. My father sold notes. Grant's name in the margin. His jaw shifted. You have more than I thought. He stared at him. And you know more than you admitted. For 1 second, neither of us moved. Then I crossed to the table, pulled the photograph of our fathers from my bag, and set it down between us. My father and yours were working together, I said. Martha Klein confirmed it. Grant was the one they were building a case against. Asher went still in that deep, dangerous way that meant the truth had landed. Somewhere vital. Then he took a folded printout from inside his coat and laid it beside the photo. Banking records. Internal transfers. Grant linked shell accounts. I found these this morning, he said. Damian's access credentials touched 3 of the proxy approvals tied to the old foundation files. He looked from the records to him and felt the shape of the whole thing changing under our feet. So we were both right, I said quietly. And both wrong. His gas held meaning. We do not have time to keep doing this separately. No apology. No softness. Not yet. Just the one thing that mattered more. Alignment. He swallowed hard and nodded once, because the apartment around us had already made the alternative clear. Fine, I said. One alliance. One target. Then we burned the lie down. Asher looked at the wreckage of my room, then back at me, and something fierce and unfinished moved behind his eyes. Good, he said. Because if Grant is searching your home now, it means he is afraid. I'm afraid men make mistakes. The strangest part of rebuilding trust was how quiet it sounded after so much damage. My apartment was still half torn apart. Papers stacked on the table. Closet doors open. My father's old file box sitting between us like a witness that had waited years to speak. Asher's security team had already swept the hall and left us alone, but the room still felt crowded with everything we had said wrong to each other. He stood by the window for a long moment, looking out at the wet city lights like he was choosing which war to fight first. Then he turned back to me and did the one thing I had stopped expecting from him. I was wrong, he said. No performance. No hedge. Just the truth, stripped clean. He went still. He crossed the room slowly, like he knew speed would ruin it. I should have listened before I judged you, he said. I should not have thrown you out before hearing the whole truth. And I should have known Grant was moving pieces long before he reached your family. The apology hit hard because it was not polished. It was real enough to hurt. You had reason not to trust me, I said, and my voice came out thinner than I wanted. I came into your life with questions I did not tell you about. He let you keep defending me while I kept part of the truth hidden. It held my gaze. You came in with grief. That is not the same thing as malice. He laughed once, quietly, because if he had said that 2 weeks ago I would have called it a lie. It still was not fair. I looked down at my father's photograph beside the banking records and forced the rest out. At first I did take the job because I thought Vale was the only way to get answers. He hated that. He hated myself more when it stopped being just that. Silence. Heavy. Honest. Asher stepped closer, not enough to touch, just enough to make the air between us feel charged again. Do you know what actually hurt? He asked. He shook my head. His voice dropped. Not your father. Not the questions. Not even the files. It was realizing I had started trusting you before I knew where I stood with you. That landed so cleanly I had to look away for a second. Because it was mine too. That was the part that scared me, I admitted. You were supposed to be the danger. Then you became the place I kept turning when everything else was falling apart. His eyes changed at that. Softer, but not safe. Not yet. We stood there inside the wreckage with too much history between us and not enough certainty ahead. No kiss. No dramatic reach across the room. Just the harder thing. Choice. Then we do this differently now, Asher said. No more half-truths. No more guessing which side the other is on. He nodded once. Same side. Same target. He looked at the records on the table, then back at me. Good. His phone buzzed at that exact moment. He checked the screen, and whatever warmth had made it into the room narrowed into focus. Grant just moved the annual foundation gala up 48 hours, he said. If he is accelerating, he thinks we are closer than we should be. He felt my pulse kick hard, because that was not just a schedule change. It was a countdown. Asher slipped the phone back into his pocket and looked at me with that calm, dangerous certainty I knew too well now. We just lost time, he said. So if we are doing this together, Nora, it starts tonight. The gala looked exactly the way Rod always tries to dress itself before it gets exposed. Crystals chandeliers. White orchids. Gold place cards. Cameras lined along the velvet rope outside the ballroom like the whole city had been invited to watch rich people pretend they were still clean. He stood in a private prep room on the second floor with a revised event program in my hands and my pulse beating hard enough to shake the paper. 48 hours. That was all Grant had given us. 48 hours to turn grief into proof and proof into something no board could bury. Asher stepped in behind me in black tie and controlled silence, The kind that always meant he was already 10 moves ahead and still furious about all of them. The room is full, he said. Bored. Donors. Press Rowan family. He looked up. Celeste to? Of course. His mouth flattened. She arrived wearing an engagement-worthy smile. He should have laughed. He did not have the energy. And Damien. Asher's eyes hardened. Unstable. Which makes him useful or dangerous? Possibly both. There it was. The whole battlefield in one sentence. He set the program down on the table between us. Then we stick to the order. You hold the room. He move the sequence. We force Grant to react before he can control the narrative. Asher watched me for one long second, and something in his expression shifted. Not softness. Respect. Worse, because it mattered. You are sure? He asked quietly. No, I said. I am terrified. That is different. For the first time all night, something close to a real smile touched his face. Brief. Gan. Good, he said. Fear keeps people precise. Then the door opened and a junior events coordinator rushed in, pale and breathless. Mr. Vale, Ms. Bennett, the foundation board wants the final running order now. Mr. Grant says the youth scholarship segment is being cut for time. He looked at Asher. He looked at me. There it was. The first move. Grant was already narrowing the window we needed. I grabbed the marked-up schedule and walked past the coordinator before my nerves could catch up to me. Then we put it back, I said. And we make sure the brown people think it was their idea. Minutes later I stood just off stage behind a black curtain, headset on, clipboard in hand, watching the ballroom fill through a narrow gap in the fabric. Celeste was downstairs in silver silk, smiling beside Grant like nothing in this world could touch her. Damien stood near the back bar, jaw tight, eyes restless, already looking like a man running out of places to hide. The board clustered near the front. Reporters hovered near the side aisles. And at the center of it all, the Vale Foundation seal glowed above the stage like a light lit from within. Asher stepped toward the wings, straightened his cuffs once, and leaned close enough that only I could hear him. Once this starts, there is no clean way back. My breath caught. He looked up at the man I had been warned never to trust, the man standing beside me anyway, and nodded once. Good, I whispered. I am done wanting clean. Then the house lights dimmed, the opening music rose, and every person who could destroy us or save us sat waiting in the same room. The first blow landed in the middle of the scholarship segment Grant had tried to cut. That was the point. If he wanted the vulnerable part of the night buried, that was where we would make him bleed. He stood in the wings with a tablet in one hand and my father's old photo tucked inside the back of my clipboard like a pulse I could not set down. On stage, Asher finished the foundation opening remarks without one wasted word, then looked toward stage left exactly once. That was my signal. He stepped to the production manager and said, "Roll archive package C now." Ejecuted. Mr. Grant cleared package A. Then Mr. Grant consumed me after dessert. The screen behind the podium lit up before anyone could stop it. Old later pages. Old notations. A preserved internal clip from a board recording Martha had helped me recover that afternoon. Grant's voice. Calm. Smiling almost. We adjust the language, contain the discrepancy, and move forward. The ballroom shifted in one long, horrified inhale. Asher did not flinch. He stood center stage and let the room hear every syllable. Then he said, clear enough to cut through. Crystal and money alike, the Vale Foundation was manipulated years ago tonight, that record starts getting corrected. For 1 second, I thought we had him. Then Grant rose from his table with the exact kind of graceful outrage men like him train for. Corrected, he repeated. By whom? A disgraced employee and a girl whose father nearly destroyed this foundation the first time. My blood went cold. He turned before the room could settle, and just like that the giant screen behind Asher filled with my father's old personnel profile. Then red circles. Missing fund notations. A freeze frame of his name attached to a flagged memo. Gusts moved through the donors like wind through dry leaves. Celeste looked almost relieved. Of course she did. Public shame was her favorite language. He stepped out from the wings before fear could pin me there. That is incomplete, I said, voice carrying farther than I expected. So many faces turned at once. So many cameras. Grant gave me that sad, polished smile again. Ms. Bennett. How brave. Shall we also explain to the room that you entered this company under false pretenses? That you targeted my nephew while building a private case against his family. The shame hit. Hot. Immediate. Worse because part of it was true. He heard whispers start to move. Gold digger. Liar. Opportunist. Same old words. Same old knives. For half a heartbeat, I was right back in that ballroom where this whole thing began, burning alive under other people's certainty. Then Asher stepped away from the podium and crossed the stage toward me in full view of every camera in the room. He stopped beside me. Not in front. Beside. That choice almost broke me. Enough, he said. Quiet. Daily. The room obeyed anyway. He looked at the board first, then the press, then Grant. Nora Bennett is not a scandal I am cleaning up, he said. She is the reason any of you are hearing the truth tonight. The silence that followed felt alive. Grant's expression flickered for the first time. Teeny. Real. But not enough. Not yet. Because the board was still wavering. The evidence was still not complete. And from the back of the ballroom, I saw Damien push off the bar at last. His face pale, his hands unsteady, like a man finally realizing the door he had hidden behind for years was about to disappear. Damien moved like a man walking toward his own execution and deciding too late that he was tired of helping build the gallows. The ballroom tracked him in a single wave of attention as he stepped out from the shadows near the bar and into the spill of stage light, pale under it, jaw tight, hands empty. Grant saw him and smiled first. That was the mistake. Damien, he said smoothly, like this was still a family matter that could be handled with tone. Sit down. Damien did not. He looked at Asher once, then at me, then up at the giant screen behind us where my father's name still hung like a stain Grant had tried to weaponize. He is lying, Damien said. His voice was not loud. It did not need to be. The room leaned in anyway. Grant smiled thin. Think very carefully before you embarrass yourself. Too late, Damien said. Something in him snapped cleanly on those two words. It turned to the board. The proxy approvals on those old foundation files were routed through my credentials. Gasps. Real ones this time. Celeste actually went still beside her chair. I felt Asher's arm tense next to mine, not with surprise, but with the force of a man holding steady while the earth finally shifted under the right person. Damien kept talking. I was 24. My father told me it was cleanup. Containment. Temporary. He said Daniel Vale was panicking, that outsiders were circling, that the family needed protection. He laughed once, hollow and ugly. What he meant was he needed a son stupid enough to sign what he did not question. Grant took one step forward, voice sharpening at last. That is enough. Damien turned on him fully. Jeers of fear burned off his face in front of everyone. No. You used me. You used Asher. You used Daniel. You used Samuel Bennett. And when they got too close to the real money trail, they died and the rest of us were told to keep the story clean. The ballroom broke into noise. Board members half standing. Reporters lifting phones. Security shifting near the walls. Through it all, Asher never moved away from me. He only looked at Damien and said, cold and precise, say his name clearly. Damien swallowed hard. Grant Vale orchestrated the rerouting of foundation funds through shell accounts and used my access to cover the approvals. Samuel Bennett was never the thief. Daniel Vale was trying to expose it. So was Samuel. Grant's mask finally cracked. You ungrateful little fool. He said it before he could stop himself, and the words landed harder than any polished denial ever could. Asher took that exact moment to lift a slim folder from the podium and hand it to the lead board counsel. Then add these, he said. Transfer records. Sale company registrations. 3 matching authorization chains tied to Damian's credentials and controlled disbursements linked back to Grant's office. The counsel flipped the first page and went white. The room changed shape around that face alone. It was over before anyone officially said it was over. Grant knew it. He knew it. Asher knew it. Grant looked at the exits like a man measuring whether dignity could outrun consequence. It could not. Security closed in, not dramatically, just decisively, the way institutions move when the lie is finally too expensive to keep. The reporters surged. The board counsel called for an emergency suspension vote. Celeste sat frozen, silver in silence and social instinct with nowhere left to go. And in the middle of all of it, I looked at Asher and felt the last poison thread snap. It had never been the son my father warned me about. The lie was gone. The truth was standing in its place. But now that the dead had finally been cleared, only one question remained, and it was somehow more terrifying than the conspiracy had been. If nothing false was left between us now, what were we supposed to do with what was real? Victory did not feel the way I had imagined it for years. It did not taste clean. It did not sound triumphant. It sounded like the ballroom emptying in waves behind me while I stood alone in the old Foundation Records room 2 floors below, staring at a row of locked cabinets that suddenly meant nothing and everything at the same time. Grant was finished. Damian had spoken. My father's name was clear. Daniel Vale's truth was clear. The lie that had shaped my life had finally broken apart in public, and all I felt was hollow. I had spent so long building myself around anger that I did not know what was left when it was gone. I figured I would find you here. Asher's voice came softly from the doorway. He did not turn right away. Did you? Yes. He stepped inside, closed the door, and let the silence settle instead of trying to fix it. That almost undid me more than anything else tonight. He looked down at the old brass cabinet labels. I thought I would feel lighter. Do you? He let out a breath that shook on the way out. I feel tired. I feel stupid for hating the wrong person. I feel angry that it took dead men and public ruin to tell the truth. And I feel like I do not know who I am if this is over. It came closer then, but not too close. Never forcing. Never claiming. Just there. Steady. It is not stupid, he said. You built your life around the story you were given. Surviving that is not a crime. He laughed once, quiet and rough. You always sound more honest when there is no audience. That is because I have less reason to hide. He looked at him then. Really looked. The man I had feared. Fought. Misread. Never. The man standing in front of me now had won back his family name tonight and somehow still looked like he was most afraid of losing something smaller and far more personal. I do not want to win the company and lose you, he said. No build-up. No polished phrasing. Just the truth. My chest tightened so fast it hurt. Asher, he shook his head once. I am not asking for an answer tonight. His voice stayed low. Careful. You have spent too much of your life cornered by lies, pressure, debt, grief. I am not adding myself to that list. If there is anything real between us, it has to be chosen freely. That did it. That was the thing that cracked me open. Not the protection. Not the power. Freedom. It was finally giving me the one thing no one else ever had. He swallowed hard and looked away before my face gave me up too. Easily. You make it sound simple. No, he said. I make it sound like yours. We stood there in the soft yellow light of a room built to hold old secrets, and for the first time since this began, neither of us reached for control. Neither of us reached for an answer too fast. It let me breathe. Let me feel the loss and the relief and the terrifying possibility of something good surviving the wreckage. When I finally turned toward the door, he moved aside and gave me space to pass. He stopped beside him anyway. That is new, I said. His mouth shifted, not quite a smile. I am trying not to ruin my chances. He should have smiled back. Maybe I did, a little. I do not know. All I know is that when I left that room, I was no longer afraid of the truth behind me. I was afraid of the choice in front of me. And somehow, for the first time in a very long time, that fear felt a little bit like hope. The first time in years I made a decision without fear sitting on my chest. It felt almost unfamiliar. 3 days after the gala, our apartment looked different. Not richer. Not magically healed. Just lighter. Mom had stopped flinching every time the phone rang. Eli had a formal letter from Columbia confirming his record would remain clear and a new scholarship offer from an independent tech foundation that had nothing to do with pity and everything to do with merit. And that morning, I had stood in a downtown office and listened to a publisher in a navy blazer offer me a full-time position writing public-facing campaign narratives for nonprofit reform work in Chicago. Glenn work. Annie's work. My own work. No veil name attached to it. No scandal. No debt trap. No man powerful enough to rearrange the ground under my feet. He should have said yes immediately. Instead, I asked for a day. That was how I knew everything had changed. Before I asked her, survival had always answered first. Take the job. Keep moving. Do not think too long. But now I had a real choice, and choice is terrifying when you are not used to having one. That evening, the relaunched foundation event was held in the same hotel where this whole mess had started. New name. New. Board oversight. A quiet public acknowledgement of past failures without turning grief into spectacle. I was invited to speak as part of the transition committee, not as staff, not as damage control, not as someone standing in the shadow of a billionaire, but as myself. The irony almost made me laugh when I stepped into the ballroom. Sami crystal. Sami polished floors. Sami kind of people dressed in money. But I was not the same woman who had once stood there burning under Celeste's contempt. Distime, no one could reduce me to an accusation I still believed. He gave my remarks with a steady voice and both feet planted. He spoke about institutions that fail when truth becomes optional. About families that survive lies only when someone finally refuses to keep carrying them. About names that deserve restoration long after the people are gone. He did not look at Asher until the very end. It was standing near the back, not at the center, not pulling focus, just watching with that quiet, dangerous stillness that had once terrified me and now only made me feel seen. When the applause came, it did not matter much. What mattered was the way my heartbeat changed when our eyes met. Not panic. Not debt. Not dependence. Choice. It waited until I stepped down from the stage before he crossed the room toward me. No audience around us this time. No urgency. No rescue. Just the man himself. You were extraordinary, he said. He smiled a little. That sounds suspiciously sincere. It is a new condition. I am monitoring it. He laughed then, softly, because of course he would make honesty sound like a medical event. Then I took a breath and told him the part that mattered. I got an offer today. Chicago. Good work. Mine. It went very still. Not cold. Just pressed. And. He held his gaze. And for the first time in my life, I know I could leave and still be okay. Something shifted in his face. Pain first. Then respect. Deep enough to break me if I let it. I nodded once. Then that is what makes this real. My throat tightened. Because he understood. Because he was not trying to stop me. Because he had learned the one lesson I needed most from him. He stepped closer. Not enough to touch. Enough to choose. I am not saying yes to a life here because I need it, I said. I am saying yes because I know I can walk away now, and I do not want to. For one long second, he said nothing. Then his whole expression changed in the smallest, most devastating way. Ope. Real ope. And that scared me less than it should have. The ballroom went quiet when I took the microphone for the second time that night, but this silence felt nothing like the first one. The first time I had stood in a room like this, I was being judged. Measured. Reduced. Tonight, I was not here to survive on Johnny's opinion. He was here to choose. I looked out at the relaunch crowd, at the new foundation seal behind me, at the donors and staff and board members who now knew exactly what truth had cost. Then I found Asher near the back, still and watchful, like he had no intention of making this easier for either of us. Good. Easy had never been our language. He tightened my grip on the microphone and said, "Some people spend years telling you who you are supposed to fear, who you are supposed to trust, and who you are never meant to love." He believed the wrong story for a long time. The room held still around me. My pulse hit hard, but it did not shake me. Not anymore. What I know now is this. Love built on lies will ruin you. Love built on power will trap you. But love built on truth gives you something I did not have before. A choice. He stepped down from the stage before the applause could swallow the moment and walked straight toward him. No cameras mattered now. No whispers. No board. Just the man who had once felt like danger and now felt like the only place I never had to perform. He stopped in front of Asher and lifted my chin. "I am not here because I need saving," I said. His eyes locked on mine, dark and steady and finally unguarded. "I know." My throat tightened anyway. "I am here because I am free enough to leave, and I do not want to." That was the truth. Simply. Plain. Heart won. For one long second, he just looked at me like the words had hit. Some were even deeper than I meant them to. Then he said the line I think some part of me had been waiting for since the night he first pulled me out of public shame and into his storm. "Then stay," he said quietly. "Not as a problem. Not as a responsibility. Not as someone caught in my world. Stay because I choose you too." My breath caught. Everything in me that had been braced for loss, for distance, for one last condition, finally let go. He smiled before I could stop it. Real smile. Not guarded. Not strategic. "That is the first reckless thing you have ever said to me." The corner of his mouth lifted. "No. The first reckless thing I did was trust you." He laughed softly, and just like that, all the broken pieces of us stopped feeling broken. They felt earned. We stood there in the middle of the life that had nearly destroyed us both, and for once nothing pulled us apart. No secret. No family ghost. No lie wearing a last name. Just truth, and the terrifying, beautiful relief of not having to fight it anymore. Later, when the room began to move again and the future no longer looked like something I had to outrun, I glanced once at the foundation wall where both our fathers' names had been restored. Then I looked back at Asher and realized the story I had spent years fearing was over. The one I actually wanted had finally begun.